Welcome to the Mayor's Update for March 2015. I'm Megan Pembroke, Communications Director for the City of Everett. And each month we sit down with Mayor Ray Stephanson and talk about issues and projects that are important to you. Mayor, welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to see you.
Yeah.
So you've been doing a lot of work with the animal shelter and adopting our furry friends. So
yes.
We've got a lot of great efforts.
We're doing the Pet of the Week. It's become very popular. Yeah, it's a good chance to highlight some of those animals who don't get a lot of love.
Yeah, that's good. Good stuff. Thank you.
Well, today I wanted to start out talking about the Streets Initiative, which we've been talking about for a while, and we are in the implementation phase now where we're figuring out what's the best way to put some of those recommendations together and get them out and in operation. So can you talk a little bit about what's happening right now and what's going to happen later this month?
Sure. Maybe just a brief overview from the start. Last summer, 2014, we brought 23 citizens together to talk about the issues that were occurring on the street. I think first we thought maybe it was just a homelessness problem, but it's certainly broader than that, and I think the committee determined that pretty quickly. So they met all through 2014, and recommendations were made by them. The subcommittees now are working. David Hall, our assistant city attorney, is leading that effort with other city staff to make a number of recommendations around their findings. I would sort of at a high level describe these recommendations as both enforcement issues for those who are committing crimes, for laws that we want to change behavior and consequences for that behavior, but also a series of help that we can provide the homeless, from mental health services, drug treatment. Obviously, when the legislature is in session, we're also asking for their help and assistance. The Carnegie building is certainly one project that we're supporting that's a countywide project, but gives an opportunity for transition from incarceration back into society. And so we've been supportive of the county's efforts in that regard. So this month, the council will see ordinances. The two highlighted ordinances that we think are important is to prohibit the sale of high alcohol content beverages in areas where we've had street problems, particularly. And so we really have to demonstrate by statistics that there's been a problem in an area to prohibit that. So that'll be one ordinance that we bring. We'll describe what those areas are, so the council will have an opportunity to debate that and vote on that. The second one, which I think will also be significant, is, and this is after a lot of legal research, is we will prohibit panhandling in intersections anywhere in the city of Everett. And for any of us who live here, drive anywhere in the city, or really any city, in the state of Washington and other places, this is a significant problem and lifestyle that professionals say we should not be supporting. That's why we have the Gospel Mission and Volunteers of America and Salvation Army. Those are the professionals that really can help. So we're really taking sort of a multifaceted approach from our court system to the way what we do and what are the criteria for people being incarcerated. How do we get them into drug treatment? How do we get mental health help? And this effort's going to go on, I think, for months and probably years.
Well, I know one of the things that came out of the task force meetings and their recommendations was that this is really not just an Everett problem, and it's not a problem that can be solved by Everett alone. It's really a county-wide problem. It's really much larger than the county. Right. But on that county-wide front, can you talk a little bit about what we've been doing in that area?
Well, we have really been going through a process of ensuring that decision makers throughout the county have an opportunity to understand the findings of our citizen panel, a clear understanding of what those recommendations are, And hopefully then we, as elected leaders in Snohomish County, can get behind, I think, important recommendations. The county executive and I brought mayors together last month to talk about these issues. And I've stated from the very beginning, Everett is inherently a center for a lot of services because we are the county seat. So there's certainly a draw here for that purpose and that reason. But if shelter and housing is a significant issue, and it is, I've made this point that it's not Everett alone to solve. Every community in this county has to do its part. And we should not be, the center of the universe for solving the housing problem. And I think I'm very encouraged that elected officials around the county understand that and are open to talking about how do we solve these problems. So, it's really a matter, I think, of how do we change the way we use the resources we have to be more proactive on the front end of some of these problems, as opposed to reacting with police or a paramedic service if there's a 911 call, or ending up in the emergency room. In states like Utah, cities like Santa Monica have done really a good job of figuring out and working to make the impacts of homelessness less effective on our citizens, but also to get the help with those folks that we need. So I'm excited about the prospects. I'm more committed than ever to stay with this and stay on top of it, and so we'll keep pushing and some of this stuff, because it's been there for so long and these problems are so complicated. I suspect that we're going to try some things, and some things will work and work well, and others won't, and we'll have to modify and just keep pushing our way forward. But the one thing we can't do is just ignore it and hope it goes away. That's just not going to work. And I can tell you, I know oftentimes I hear citizens say, well, we don't want to become a mecca for the homeless. I'm mindful of that. So when we're seeing illegal behavior, abuse of drugs, and illegal activity in that regard, our enforcement's going to be very strong, and the consequences are going to be very serious for those people who are behaving in that way. And I think that's what our citizens expect.
I think you're right. I think this is something we're going to be talking about for a long time. Well, thank you for that update. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about commercial air and higher education.
Owning and maintaining a home can be a challenge for many families struggling to make ends meet. But living on a tight budget doesn't mean you can't improve your home. The City of Everett offers home repair services for low to moderate income families and landlords through its Community Housing Improvement Program. CHIP, a HUD-sponsored community service, has funds available for housing rehabilitation within Everett city limits.
I'm so happy that the CHIP program was able to help me, because now I have a snug home that I can live in for many years to come.
For more information or to find out if you qualify, call CHIP at 425-257-8735.
Welcome back to the Mayor's Update. Mayor, something that's been in the news a lot lately, and I know has been talked about quite a bit, is commercial air service at Paine Field, and this is something we've talked about a lot, and I know you've been pretty vocal about your position on it. Why is this such a critical issue for Snohomish County?
We can, all see with our own eyes and our own experience the congestion that's occurring on our highways when we travel in and out of SeaTac, really any mode of transportation. It's interesting, in the last 4 years, the traffic, the number of vehicles on I-5 in 4 years has nearly doubled between Everett and King County. So when you think, gee, I've got an hour drive to SeaTac to catch a flight, and 3 hours later you've missed your flight because you're still at Boeing Field. That's really unacceptable. And as much as it might be an inconvenience for the recreational traveler, it's even more critical for business and commerce. So I was thinking to myself, we use these terms and maybe people don't always know what we're talking about, but we're really talking about regional scheduled air service by one or more carriers out of Paine Field. And this will not be SeaTac North. It's just simply physically not possible. The configuration of Paine Field is primarily a north-south runway. We now we're blessed to have Boeing there, and we've got other developments. So you're not going to see parallel runways and 200,000 flights a year. That's just not going to happen. So you're talking basically, and this is what the FAA approved, a 2-gate terminal. There could be 1, 2, or more carriers. The number of flights will be restricted to what that terminal can handle. The idea is to be able to move people between Everett and Portland is probably a hub to get to anywhere in the country. I suspect there'll be direct flights to California. There'll probably be some in-state flights. There'll probably be flights to recreational places like Reno or Las Vegas or Palm Springs. I think all that's to be determined, but all those ideas have certainly been talked about. So where we are right now, after frankly years, I mean, not just years, I should probably say decades, of talking about the need and all kinds of discussion about what's possible and not possible, and opposition and proponents, we're finally to a place where there is a private company that does build terminals, operate terminals. They have a very good relationship with the airline industry and know what kinds of airlines to attract here. They want a long-term lease with Snohomish County. The county council has to make that lease decision of whether to enter into that agreement. That will be followed by a series of analysis. The questions will be asked, is a separate environmental statement necessary, or is the one that the FAA did earlier when they determined that there were no significant impacts of a regional air service out of Everett, whether that can be used. There's a nice circuit court decision that has to be finalized. So I suspect that if we had a decision today that Snohomish County would enter into a lease with a private company, we're probably a year, maybe 2 years, maybe even a little longer away from the time that you and I can step on one of those airplanes and fly somewhere. It will take some time to develop, but the important thing to remember, and I think sometimes people don't see all the sort of moving parts of this. One is when an airline accepts funds from the FAA, and Paine Field has, and they will need more funding in the future to maintain the runway and snow removal and other maintenance items. When you become an FAA-funded airport, you cannot discriminate on what kinds of services go in and out or use that airport. This is an airport that's under 45% utilized, so it's not a heavily used airport. The other thing that's important about the FAA funding is the certification that Boeing needs to operate out of Everett. The point here is, unless there is some reason that is acceptable to the FAA and frankly, to the legal community for the county to not enter into this lease, they are in violation of their agreement with the FAA, and potentially funding could be in jeopardy, and the operation of that airport could be in jeopardy. So it's important that the county take this very seriously, act on the facts, The FAA, who's cited many regional and other airports around the country, they know really what they're doing. They've analyzed all of this. I think, frankly, if we had commercial air service or scheduled air service today, people wouldn't even notice. There's just not going to be that many flights, and these are quieter airplanes, and so we, I think, are getting really to a critical decision here that needs to be decided in the affirmative by the County Council.
Well, thank you for that update.
Yeah.
Well, and finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about higher education. We've talked about the legislature being in session right now, and some of the transportation initiatives that we're supporting, but we're also supporting some requests by WSU for expanding their programs up here and building a new facility. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Washington State University is our higher education partner in Everett and Snohomish and Island and Skagit County, and we're frankly blessed to have them. One of the two research universities in the state of Washington, and they have expanded their programs, and they are also now in a leadership with University Center, which is a consortium of public universities, a few privates, around the state of Washington. Student population has grown from under 200 just a few years ago to nearly 600, and they project that by 2025 they'll be in the range of 1,500 to 2,000 students. With that many students, they're growing out of Gray Wolf Hall, so we've made a capital ask for really the first significant Washington State University building. It'll be located in the old shopping center at the corner of, at the intersection of Tower and North Broadway. It'll be about a 100,000 square foot building, a $61 million capital ask. It is the highest priority for Washington State University this year. So we feel very good that we have strong advocates in support of that. We've also asked for, or they have asked for, and we're supporting another $4.5 million to do more STEM degrees and one agricultural degree at that site. So the legislature's in session. This may be a long session, but we are advocating for those two higher education needs, and I feel very positive about our chances. You know, one thing that I want to mention to the neighborhoods and the neighbors that live out there, we are very mindful that Everett Community College and the student population there has really created a lot of pressure and a lot of angst for the neighbors that live in and around there. Part of the pre-planning for this new building included capital to acquire property to replace the parking that will be lost when this building is built. And that's important because we don't want to be flooding more students into the neighborhoods. We're doing more though. We're looking at our time restrictions in and around the college. Our traffic people are looking at that right now. In this legislative session as well, there are some additional transit dollars, operating dollars identified for Everett and community transit, which will provide more public transportation for students. But right now, between Everett Transit and CT, community transit, we have about 8 buses an hour that are at the Everett Community College. And some of those are WSU students and other University Center students. I think we've got to work together to get our students to use public transportation more frequently, but we're trying, the point here is we see the issue, we see the problem, we see the challenge, and we're doing everything we can with a sort of a multi-faceted approach to solving this problem. So, you know, higher education is alive and well in Everett, and our legislators really understand the value of it. I think because Washington State University is a land-grant college that really has a responsibility in its charter to take the education to where the people are and where the people are less served. Benefits us. I think we're the envy of other communities in Kitsap and other places that want it as well. The other added benefit, and we have a huge medical growing presence in Everett and Snohomish County. Washington State University wants to start offering medical degrees, primarily for the underserved, more rural communities in the state. And if they're successful, and I believe they will be, they've got a great story, Everett's going to get a part in a portion of that medical student education, which will be really great for us.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's a lot to look forward to.
It's a lot to remember, but
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
And thank you for watching. We hope you'll join us again in April.